So, unlike others, I literally came up from zero. Being an immigrant child of a working class family that barely made a living to a 6-digit salary with over 200 direct reports. It took me only 6 years to work in my profession to get into that position. But behind every "I did it on my own" story is a far more untold story. Today I will explain the story how I was able to turn my life around, but I will also highlight that starting from zero could mean for everyone something else. I competed all the time with native kids, and my dad told me always, "You're starting a game with 2 points in behind, my son. That's your pre-saved game, time for our comeback." Back then I didn't realize that his game was even worse. Let me explain that to you with our first topic in this video, assessing your situation very boldly. So as I told you, my dad's situation was even worse than mine, and let aside my grandfather's situation. My grandfather worked in our home country in agriculture, literally to survive the day under the burning hot sun of Turkey. It was around the 1950s, so it's sure to say that his pre-saved game was starting at -30 or so. He decided to take risk and emigrate from his country to Germany. His only goal was to offer his further generations a better life. And after World War II, Germany was looking for workers from outside countries. They were especially looking for people that should work in jobs which the average German wasn't open to work in. My grandfather knew the deal and he signed anyways because he said to himself, everything is better than to work in agriculture. So he worked for almost the whole day and to get less compensated than the average German. But my grandfather was okay with that, because still this was a better deal from his individual perspective than working in agriculture under the harshest conditions. For that he probably had to undergo the most anti-human procedures, like the control of his urine, like the measurement of his body parts. Everything that you could imagine was done to him. They weren't necessarily looking for humans, they were just looking for workforce. I had a strong grandfather. He checked all the boxes and was allowed to work in Germany. Arriving there, he started to work in a foundry. Thinking that the Turkish sun was hot, he was now feeling the hot temperature of steel production in Germany. Black face, black hands from all the dust in the production. Plus he had 2 more jobs that he worked in, so he was barely sleeping, let's say 3 to 4 hours. He did that procedure for almost 45 years. And from our perspective, he literally made it from nothing, because he was able to bring his son to Germany. This enabled my dad to work in a slightly easier position than my grandfather. Plus, on top of that, my grandfather was able to buy a bunch of land back in Turkey. So in his retirement, he started working again in agriculture, but now on his own land. He had a bunch of workers then, and they were now following his conditions. It may took him 45 years, but he maxed out his individual situation. So as we said, my grandfather was probably 30 points in behind, but now he was 15 points in behind. And this was the pre-saved game of my dad when he started. So this is the exact thing I want to say. Everyone starts from zero, but they have a different starting position. My dad was fortunate enough to start only 15 points from behind compared to my granddad, who was at -30. My dad also worked under harsh conditions. And he was also barely making a living because he didn't go to school, as no one knew better. No one did understand from the former generations that education was important. But by him working under harsh conditions, getting work packages and assignments from managers, he understood that going to school and getting a degree would enable you to become a manager. Because all the time he just saw technicians, engineers that assigned him some work packages. And the difference here was my dad's life goal wasn't then to buy land back in our home country because my grandfather did that job. The primary goal of my dad was that his children were able to go to school, get an education. He always told us that he wanted us to max out our academic path. So not only did he almost work as hard as my grandfather, he optimized probably the one thing that my grandfather missed. Taking care of his children, not in terms of money, in terms of fathership. So my dad spent a lot of time with his children to optimize their academic path, to talk to their teachers, how to optimize their capabilities. And I do remember very well back in the day he spent so much money on tutoring, And although we didn't have any money to spend at all, my dad was wearing second-hand clothes. So me observing my dad working under these conditions just to max out his situation gave me the drive to optimize my life situation as well. Because my dad literally did the unthinkable. He put me almost in the perfect position to land my jump. So it was impossible for me to miss. I understood the assignment. I took up the pre-saved game of his. We didn't need to speak about that. As a man to another man, you can exactly understand which way and which path they did go through. So when my dad said to me that my game was starting 2 points from behind, there was also work done from the generations before. And for that I'm paying tribute to the 2 men before me. I literally said, now it's my turn. Watch me. Okay, so an engineer was bossing around my grandfather and my father. Here's a bachelor's degree. I'm an engineer too. What did you say? You can also do a master's degree in that? Here you have it. I'm going to take it as well. I finished my university as one of the best students. I started working in the automotive industry, one of the most prestige industries to work in. If I'm comparing myself to the average German at the moment, I would say I'm 5 points up. But did you recognize something? What I said? My granddad made 15 points, so from minus 30 to minus 15. My father made 13 points from minus 15 to minus 2. And I made from minus 2 points it to 5 points at the moment, so in total 7 points. Of course, I have a lot more to go, and probably I will not be able to break the 11 points mark. Because the more you grow, the more difficult it gets. It's like in F1 racing, if you think of that. Decades ago, the slightest optimizations were making a huge difference. But now in Formula 1, if you optimize big things, you will get less return. And it's the same thing with personal growth, finance and development. Because the more you grow, you will start pushing boundaries. And the more you push it, the more difficult expansion will get. So my life goal is to get to 11 points. Currently I'm making 6 digits a year after tax. And my goal is to get to 7 digits after tax in my life. Will I make it? Maybe. But if I don't make it, I definitely know that my child will take it up from here. The key message I want to deliver here is, who literally started from zero? Was it me, who was fortunate enough to be born in a privileged country, getting access to education, being able to read books all day and do nothing else instead of studying? Or was it my granddad who had to work in agriculture? I guess that's a no-brainer question. So it's safe to say I had people that paved the way for me. I just had to study hard, get a good degree and land a career. That's it. Of course, it sounds a little bit more easy than it actually is. Now the real question for you becomes, after you assessed your whole situation individually, as I did also with my own life, what do you need to get to that next step? For me, it's clear. First, you need some fuel, something that keeps you going. I think after talking around 7 minutes about my personal background, it's clear what keeps me going. It's the fact that 2 generations before me had worked their butt off to put me in that exact position I'm in at the moment. So from working in agriculture to a management position with direct reports of 200 people and managing multi-million-dollar budgets. I'm accountable of that. And I'm not done yet. I will achieve my life goal when I make my own multi-million dollars, or at least set up my child in that position to make that financial success. Not that money matters specifically, but you better have some than have none, right? So jokes aside guys, my personal life goal is to set the upcoming generations in the best way I can. Because at the end of the day, I did get a pre-saved game that was only 2 points in behind, and I know that my previous generations did the best way they could. And now some may say, will the upcoming generations even deserve that? Or will they handle it right? I can only tell you that is outside of my responsibility. And my responsibility is to handle the pre-saved game I've got in the best way I can, and to give it down or pass it down in the next generation the best way I can. That's how my mind finds some peace. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean by that hunting down every piece of investment opportunity and chasing the next road to million or something like that. The best way to explain myself, let's do an example. Let's say you built a table or something like that, right? You either give it your full attention and make the best table you can, even though it may have some flaws here and there, but it's the best product that you could produce. Or on the other hand, you could do much better, but you don't give it the necessary focus and therefore it's just a bad table. And every time you look at it, you know that you could actually done it better, but you didn't because you was too lazy or simply you wasn't able to focus at the task at hand. So it's not that I'm covering away from mistakes, I'm just avoiding to let my focus fade from the task I have. I do that by challenging myself all the time, and this is the next thing I want to talk about in this video. I could right now enjoy my life, right? Could work from 9 to 5, work in that big organization, manage a lot of people, manage multi-million-dollar budgets, get compensated very well, but this is nothing I strive for. Well, yes, probably you could enjoy your life, right? Enjoy the days with your wife, with your child, make nice vacations, and just work in that task field that you get and not move out of it, but this is not something I strive for because I know I can do much better. I can work 16 hours a day without getting exhausted and not only 8. And all of these extra hours I push into starting a new business and learning new things like accounting, dealing with your own taxes. Again, these are boundaries no one from my inner circle did ever push. So I have no one to learn from. And currently I'm learning on my own, I'm failing a lot, but I'm finding my way. I get a lot of governmental fees, warnings that I did some mistakes here and there, and that's fine, right? Because at the end of the day, I do understand this bureaucracy processes where you can do some mistakes, but it's much more important for me how I can correct them and not do them again. I call this approach of mine incremental learning. Because with every piece of new information, my approach changes. And this gives me a higher probability to succeed. But what are those challenges I confront myself with? Well, it's starting a YouTube channel, talking in English or talking in Turkish. I currently have 2 YouTube channels, and usually I'm not the type of guy who's very comfortable talking in front of the camera or talking to a big audience. And this is exactly what I was looking for as a challenge. I did learn English only at high school. I did learn Turkish only at home talking to my parents. I didn't have any classes that I did extra that gave me the confidence to talk to a big audience. Do I care about other people's opinion? No, because I'm learning. Someone that's out there complaining or judging my actions, I couldn't care less. I've started a lot of businesses. I failed some of those, but I succeeded also with some. Currently I own 6 businesses. Probably every job and every business you can think of, I tried it at least once. The 6 businesses I succeeded with make on top of my normal job salary almost the same amount. So I own a cleaning service company, I own a consultancy agency for AI applications, I own a consultancy company for automotive, I own a software development company, an e-commerce company that sells Turkish coffee, and last but not least, I do some freelancing, but not on Fiverr or Upwork or something like that. I work for big corporations. Some might say you also do YouTube, but to be quite frank, I don't see YouTube as a business. Because if I would see YouTube as a business, I probably couldn't talk that free on this channel, because then I would stress out and think, what will these people think about me? Will it give me some revenue? I treat it like a hobby, like sharing experiences in my journey. So it's safe to say I give here private insights. I even talk more about my private life probably than I ever would talk with my friends about it. Because at the end of the day, why do I do that? I hope to get to people that are inspired by that and outperform me. And if you do that, I'm taking all the flowers from you, because I was the reason why you started. So be aware, with all these informations I gave you, right? And I'm sharing these things with you, but not for you to talk about it and share it with your colleagues at work, because many people will get intimidated by people thinking like that. So the things and the thought process I'm sharing with you, it's not meant for everyone. At the end of the day, you will overload your conversation partner, especially at work. Those are people who work 40 hours a week and they are done with that. And this will stand in your way, especially if you want to grow a career and get to the next level, then it's not the right choice to be that confident on the surface. Because people will recognize you as a threat and then sabotage you. That way you will never get to a 6-digit salary. In this video I've shared the mindset behind the reason why I was able to grow my salary to a 6-digit income. And if you now want to know how to grow your income in a corporate setting, write down in the comment section down below corporate income. That way I know which topics are of interest and I can cover that in one of my upcoming videos. There are literally little secrets which no one talk about, which are just psychological tricks that will get you to the next level. If you think about it, where did your life game start? Let me know that in the comment section down below. As always, I will read through everything and try to answer all of the comments. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe to stay tuned. See you in the next one. Bye.